Hey guys, you've heard of the Young Turks podcast because you're listening to it right now. But make sure that you subscribe and give it a 5-star rating if you like it. Thank you for listening. Oh no, drop it. All right, power panel. Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, Maz Jobrani, everybody.
Hey man.
Great to have you, Maz.
Happy to be here with you guys.
Every time you come back, I think, uno Maz.
Hey.
Yeah. Okay, big show ahead for you guys. Big show. Are we gonna buy Greenland? I'm gonna shock you, by the way, in my opinion on that. So that's gonna be fun. Well, now that I told you, it's not gonna be as shocking. How much did corporations rip us off because the Republicans looted the IRS? New results in on Jeffrey Epstein's autopsy.
He was killed by an ocelot, turns out.
Oh, no one saw that coming.
No.
It was a banana peel.
Was it homicide, suicide, or something else?
It's probably one of those two.
Probably, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so lots to get to. John, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, let's launch into it. I was really hoping we'd joke around a little bit longer. The quest of 2 congresswomen to get into Israel and see what's going on in terms of the treatment of Palestinians, visit family, all of that continues. Yesterday, you might know, on Thursday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blocked Rashida Tlaib, congresswoman, and another Democratic Congress member, Ilhan Omar, from visiting Israel and the Palestinian territories, citing the women's support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel. So that was what we knew yesterday, and of course on the show we broke that down. And it was a fairly unprecedented thing, not only that they made the decision inside of the Israeli government to do this, but also that the president put out an approving tweet encouraging a foreign government to block members of our government from visiting. Today, though, I guess got into a bit more of a personal form in regard to Representative Rashida Tlaib. The Netanyahu government today said it would allow Rashida Tlaib to enter the country to visit her grandmother were she to file a humanitarian request, which the congresswoman later did. Tlaib pledged initially not to vocalize her support for the BDS movement while in the region. She eventually shifted on that and explained it, saying that she wanted to make sure that she could speak the truth if visiting Israel. So initially she agreed to certain restrictions on free speech, or I would say her responsibility as a member of our government to reflect accurately what she sees while traveling abroad. But she decided that cost was too much, even at the risk of not seeing her family members. We're gonna have messages both from Rashida Tlaib and also from the Israeli government. But what did you think about this development? Also, Maz, about the entire debacle?
Yeah. So I don't know what I would have done. I think she was put in a really hard spot. If government told me you're allowed to come here, but you're not allowed to state your real opinions when you get here, especially if you're a US representative and a lot of cameras will be on you, and this is your one chance to speak to the Palestinians, to the Israelis, to the whole region. Well, that's a hell of a thing to try to block you from doing, and I would want to say no under almost any circumstance. But I say almost because what if it was your last opportunity to see your grandmother? Well, Jesus, then I don't know what I would do, right? But I do know this. Saying, no, I'm not gonna agree to your oppressive terms, even if it costs me seeing my grandmother, is an incredibly strong move. Yeah. And you have to give her tremendous respect for doing that.
Yeah, and I think actually, I bet you that she had a discussion with her family and her grandmother probably said, I don't want you to do this, because my guess is that the grandmother's living in those situations, and she says, "I'd rather have you have a voice and express what's really going on here."
Yeah.
This whole thing, when you go back to it, the idea of trying to stop someone from having a critical voice in what's supposed to be a democracy in the Middle East it just puts the whole thing, it's a sham then, because the way they blocked them from coming there, it sounds more like what a dictatorial Arab government would do, or what Iran would do, or what China would do. And for you to be critical of those other countries and then go ahead and do the same thing that you're saying those countries do, which is to stop a critical voice from even coming here, that to me is the height of hypocrisy.
Well, look, we got to have a real discussion about when we stop calling Israel a democracy, because do they have some wonderful parts of their system that's quite liberal and like a democracy? Absolutely. So there's voting, and even Muslims get to vote. But now Netanyahu is even challenging that notion. Their courts are oftentimes quite tough on their politicians and holding Netanyahu accountable for corruption, etc. That's not concluded yet, but they've been tough in the past on corruption, way more so than America has. On the other hand, there's certain things you're not allowed to say. And if you're used to the American form of government where we have First Amendment rights, and you go to Israel and they say, no, if you say that, you're going to be in a lot of legal trouble.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's certainly a strike against freedom. And then, oh yeah, that little asterisk of imprisoning millions of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and West Bank, let alone the thousands of ones actually in physical prisons. Gaza's an open air prison. They don't control their borders. They can't leave. And every part of that is an occupation. It's an oppression. It's state violence. So, I mean, was America a democracy when we had slavery? That's an interesting question. It was for some, but it wasn't for women. It wasn't certainly for the slaves. It wasn't for a lot of people in this country. And so Israel's in a situation where they don't have slavery, but they have imprisoned, in essence, millions of innocent Palestinians, and they will not let them go. They just say, no, we think by inherently, you as Muslims, as Palestinians, are too dangerous and to ever trust you with borders and ruling yourself. So we're never ever going to let you go. That is Netanyahu's policy. It's not every Israelis by a long shot, but he just won re-election. So I don't know. So I think just constantly calling it a democracy is, at a minimum, requires a massive asterisk.
By the way, real quickly, for Trump to weigh in and say because these congresswomen are critical of Israel, you shouldn't let them in Israel, then by that logic, we shouldn't let Trump in America because he's been very critical of America. That's what got him where he is.
Yeah.
So he's not supporting freedom of speech, and again, it's very hypocritical because we should be able to criticize these places, and if he's not going to stand behind the congresswomen, no matter what side they're on, then that it shows his dictatorial tendencies.
Yeah, just real quick on that, Maz. We had our shot. You're getting me to rethink Israel's position. When he went to Scotland to visit his golf course during the primaries and during the election, we'd be like, what do you mean make America great again? What do you mean again? You seems like your whole campaign is based on criticizing America. That's it, you're banned. Stay in Scotland forever.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scotland.
Yeah, and by the way, and if it was the sort of thing where it's just, well, we're not supposed to insult our allies. I mean, do we want to go through what Trump has said about literally every ally we have? I mean, do we really want to see those quotes? Come on.
Germany,
let alone other
Canada,
countries. Yeah, exactly.
Mexico, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah. Trump goes to the cities that were just struck by terror attacks inside of the US and insults their mayors to their face. Okay, that's his idea of decorum. So some of what you were actually talking about, Rashida Tlaib, in explaining her decision on social media, she referenced some of that, saying, silencing me and treating me like a criminal is not what she wants from me, speaking of her grandmother. It would kill a piece of me. I've decided that visiting my grandmother under these oppressive conditions stands against everything I believe in, fighting against racism, oppression, and injustice. Now the thing is, because she initially agreed to it and then pulled out, every disingenuous right-winger, and some people probably don't consider themselves right-winger on the internet, are attacking her, saying that effectively she was using her grandmother as a pawn. I don't see how did she win in this? But in any event, it's not just random people on social media. It includes literally the person she was coordinating with in Israeli government for this visit, the Minister of the Interior, who tweeted, Representative Tlaib just tweeted that she won't be coming to Israel. Just yesterday, she sent me a letter asking to visit her 90-year-old grandmother, saying it might be my last chance to meet her. He goes on to say, I approved her request as a gesture of goodwill on a humanitarian basis, but it was just a provocative request aimed at bashing the state of Israel. Apparently, her hate for Israel overcomes her love for her grandmother.
Hey, wait, look, now I'm really pissed. Hey, you're the one imprisoning her grandmother.
Yeah.
If those territories were not occupied, then grandma could come over here. They could be free. You're the one completely preventing her freedom, and then you have the audacity to talk about how she's using her grandmother as a pawn. You're the ones who are using all of those people as pawns. Hey, you must say that boycott, divestment, and sanctions is a bad idea, or shut up about it. You're not allowed to say anything if you ever want to see your grandmother again.
Yeah.
And you're telling us she's using her as a pawn? No, you're literally holding her hostage and saying you're not allowed to say the truth if you want to see your grandmother before she dies. That's the kind of sick game that you're playing, and then you want to talk about pawns.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
And he used her grandmother in that tweet against her, so he's using the grandmother as a pawn.
Yeah, and also when I initially saw those tweets, I thought, what? I mean, this has got to be a fake account or something, because this isn't a pundit. This is a member of the Israeli government saying that. And I thought, what if it's just some random shady person on Twitter? So I looked into their background and I found out that they are a representative of the government, but they are incredibly shady, because back in 1999, that individual was convicted of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust and served 22 months in Israeli prison for accepting over $150,000 in bribes. But please preach to us more.
As Scaramucci said, the fish rots from the head down. And Netanyahu is corrupt. The Israeli government believes he's corrupt. They're investigating thoroughly, for which I just gave them credit. And so is it surprising that he hired a bunch of criminals? That's exactly what Trump does here. Yeah. Trump hired a whole bunch of criminals, some of whom have been caught and are already in prison. Some of are in mid-process, etc. The fish rots from the head down. So look, the right-wing government in Israel has lost its mind. I mean, now we're not even talking about two-state solutions. There's no solution at all. In the old days, look, there was a lot of things wrong, a million things wrong on all sides, right? But at least you had guys like Yitzhak Rabin who considered it. And then the right wing in Israel assassinated him. It was the most successful terrorist strike maybe in human history. They had the peace deal, they were about to do it, and the right wing's like, oh, I got an idea, let's use violence. And by the way, back then, Netanyahu was a guy actually roiling everybody up. Oh, Rabin's a traitor, Rabin's terrible, you gotta do something about Rabin. And then somebody assassinates the leader of Israel who was gonna do peace, and then Netanyahu was like, well, I guess we can't do peace. You gotta go with a warmonger like me. And so, look, you know what, Israel, if you wanna prove, I'm talking about the right-wing government of Israel, you wanna prove that you're humanitarian, you're a democracy, etc., why don't you let the grandmother out? Why don't you pay for her ticket? Or you don't even have to pay for the ticket. Here, I'll raise money from our audience to pay for a ticket right now, okay? And while you're at it, why don't you let other Palestinians out? Oh, you won't, because you're not really a democracy and you're oppressing those people. Well, you're occupying them. And now, by the way, sorry, John, these right-wing pundits in America are like, oh no, well, really, are they really occupied? What are you talking about? If they're not occupied, what are they? Can they just cross the border right now? Well, no, you're not allowed to cross the border. Palestinians by definition are dangerous, right? No, that is a racist position to have. They say, well, you know what? I'm not sure they all acknowledge that. They got to get every single person to acknowledge that Israel has a right to exist. Does Israel have a right to exist? Of course. But meanwhile, look at the incredible irony and hypocrisy. Since every one of the millions of people here hasn't said that I'm allowed to exist, I will now, well, for the last 50, 60 years, I've not allowed you to exist. But wait a minute, Israel already exists, but you will not allow Palestine to exist as a country. And then you claim you're the aggrieved party? Well, some of them said that theoretically maybe we shouldn't exist, but in reality, I've oppressed them, crushed them, and not allowed their existence as a state. No, the guilty party here is abundantly clear. If you can't see it, it's because you're biased. And you think, well, I mean, look, the Israelis are great and the Palestinians should be oppressed for the rest of time. If you believe that, then you know what? That is a racist position. Sorry, not sorry. That's a racist position.
So if we could turn just to potentially the future of our relationship there, it's probably going to continue the way it has been literally for decades. But there are some people who are questioning it in some of the ways that you just did. Actually, these are names that you're going to be familiar with. One is one of the representatives who's banned from visiting the country. Ilhan Omar tweeted, "As many of my colleagues have stated in the last 24 hours, we give Israel more than $3 billion in aid every year. This is predicated on their being an important ally in the region and the quote only democracy in the Middle East. Denying visits to duly elected members of Congress is not consistent with being either an ally or a democracy. We should be leveraging that aid to stop the settlements and ensure full rights for Palestinians. So that's, you have a congresswoman, you have someone in the House, but also in the Senate, Bernie Sanders, I believe earlier today, said this.
We have a president who tragically is a racist, is a xenophobe, and who is a religious bigot. But the idea that a member of the United States Congress cannot visit a nation, which, by the way, we support to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, is clearly an outrage. And if Israel doesn't want members of the United States Congress to visit their country to get a firsthand look at what's going on, and I've been there many, many times, but if he doesn't want members to visit, maybe he can respectfully decline the billions of dollars that we give to Israel. All that I am saying is that we need a Middle East policy which is even-handed, which protects the independence and the safety of Israel, but also shows respect to the Palestinian people, many of whom in Gaza and elsewhere are suffering incredibly. Unemployment rate off the charts. People cannot leave their community.
Like a boss. Okay, look, the funny thing is we give Bernie Sanders tremendous credit there for saying things that are super obvious, but it's only because the rest of Washington is insane. And so he says we should be even-handed. They're like, whoa, controversial. How is that controversial? We should have 2 states. Whoa, I don't know about that. How is that controversial? Hey, if you say that US Congress members are not allowed into your country, maybe our billions of dollars in aid also should not be allowed into your country. You can't have it both ways. You spit at our Congress members and then say, but I demand the money. Who gets to do that other than Israel? Even Canada couldn't get away with that. The UK couldn't get away with that. But Israel gets to say, here, and if your Congress people come to our country, we're gonna make sure that they shut up and they're not allowed to say anything. Meanwhile, send me the $3 billion. Who gets to say that? That's insanity. And conservatives, I thought you cared about fiscal discipline. But when it comes to Israel, we've given them $140 billion and they misleadingly call it aid. Some of it is in financial and economic aid. What happened to standing up with your own bootstraps, by the way? Well, we could send bootstraps. No, that's for poor Americans. You spit on poor Americans, but you give Israelis anything they want. Okay, but that is the minority. The majority of the money is in military aid. So why are we financing their military? They have a gigantic military. They have nukes. They can pulverize all of the Arab nations. They could literally nuke all the Arab nations around them. I hope to God that it never comes to that. But why are we giving hard-earned tax dollar money to a country that doesn't even allow Congress members to go? That is an obvious thing to say. But of course, as usual, Bernie Sanders is the only one with the courage to say the things that are obviously true. And I'm gonna add one more thing to it. Look, when he says we want the sanctity and the independence and safety of Israel, no one disagrees with that. He's got family members in Israel. Why would he want to put them in danger? I want Israel to be perfectly safe and secure. I also want them to have the moral high ground. Right now, they are not safe and secure because they're saying, you know what? You millions of Palestinians, you have no hope. You have no hope of ever reaching a diplomatic solution. You have no hope of reaching a legal solution or an economic solution. Now, what do you think that's gonna lead to? It's gonna lead to violence against Israel. And moral high ground, what a joke. Look, BDS, I'm gonna have a debate about it on the show, and it's an interesting thing, but this was a really stupid political move by Netanyahu's government. Because what did it do? It sparked a giant conversation about, hey, maybe we should do BDS, because they're not listening to anything else. But if you say boycott, divestment, and sanction, all of a sudden, they're like, wait a minute, what do you do? Don't do that, don't do that, right? Oh, I see, we got your attention. So that's interesting. So maybe we should do that a lot more.
But it also, politically speaking, on Trump's side, he was probably playing, it's more of the demonization of the Muslims and the Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars. He's playing to his base in many ways. And I know that, I believe AIPAC came out against the move. So I don't know, maybe he was trying to play and get more Jewish Americans on his side. Definitely getting his base to be around him and go, look, these Muslims hate the Jews, and so again, it's a play that he's doing, and I don't know if it helped him with his base or not. I'm guessing it does, to demonize these two again and demonize these people. And so it's a shame that people that support Trump aren't seeing that as openly. It's such a simple game to play. To go, look, these Muslims with the thing on their head, they,
Yeah, but Maz, I'll disagree with that on two counts. One, first of all, I don't think it's a play for Jewish American voters. Jews vote 70% Democratic in this country. They're the second most reliable bloc for the Democratic Party after African Americans. And there's not that many Jewish Americans, so he'd barely get any votes. No, it's a play for his evangelical base, who are the great majority of which are bigots and racists. So when he says, these Muslims, Talib and Omar, they love it. They're like, yes, I hate Muslims too. Finally, a guy willing to say it as it is.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
and so that's the play that he's making. But he's already got that base locked up. I mean, who else hates Muslims and Latinos and blacks and Jews as much as Trump doesn't? I mean, we've never had a politician filled with that much hatred and fear. So the right-wing evangelical voters are like, yes! They've been waiting for this guy for decades now. So it's not a smart move. I know some people think it's a distraction, et cetera, to try to distract from the stock market crash, et cetera, et cetera.
It's to buy him some time to buy Greenland.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, it's mediocre politics for Trump. It's the same old playbook. Go to hatred and fear. Go to hatred and fear. Does he really care what they say about Israel? No, it's just an anti-Muslim play. For Netanyahu, though, it was a really stupid political move. It was much more damaging to him than it was to Trump.
Although probably helps him with Trump.
It does, but that's also stupid because it's a short-term play. You think Trump's gonna be in office in a year and a half from now? And Netanyahu, if that's your calculation, have at it, Hoss. But if somebody like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren's in office, oops,
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
totally miscalculated.
We'll see.
Okay, all right, we got to take a break, guys. When we come back, should we or shouldn't we buy Greenland? All right, back on the Young Turks. There's too many of these comments, so I'll read only one. The Restless Progressive says, hey, it's Maz Jobrani. I love his comedy specials. Okay.
All right, I'll take that. Let the world know. Give it a thumbs up. Watch it on Netflix. Immigrant, watch it now. Go ahead. Sorry, plug. Thank you.
Yes, and by the way, also watch Ida Rodriguez on the Tiffany Haddish special on Netflix. So we got a lot of Young Turks folks on there. Gabby, by the way, also on Showtime, The Loudest Voice. You should watch it because it tells the story of Roger Ailes. Yes, it's like revolting, but it's super interesting. And I have a 1-second cameo in the last episode.
You do?
Yes.
I did not know that. Interesting.
All right. I mean, cameo is in they took a clip from the show. But anyways, Gabby Marino says, if being critical of a government is a legitimate reason to block someone from entering that country, shouldn't Donald Trump be banned from like 3/4 of the world's landmass?
Please.
That's a great point that builds off of what Maz was saying about him being banned here. And then finally, on Twitter, Mr. Fancy Pants, which is already fun, says that Ben Shapiro intro audio is going to be my new ringtone.
Sloppy Steve.
I didn't know they could hear that.
What a creep. Right?
Right, totally. Okay, now, you know what? That'll be fun way to annoy Ben Shapiro. Have us win a streaming for Podcast of the Year. And you could do that by going to tyt.com/streamies. There you could vote on Young Turks for best news show online, and the conversation for best podcast, and Happy Half Hour for best comedy. We have links there, but it's really easy. tyt.com/streamies gets you to the links for all three of those.
I just want super fast, but on the you should criticize the government, which now they should be banned because they criticize Israel, but also a couple weeks ago it was don't criticize the US government. We can't do anything to hopefully stop some of these mass shootings because conservatives demand the right to own whatever military hardware is necessary to kill enough cops and members of the military to overthrow the government if they want to, but don't say anything critical. At the same time.
No, I've made that point many times where what did they, my Second Amendment right to fight off the government. Oh, so you would like to murder cops and soldiers. So let's just be clear about that.
If you disagree with the government, but don't criticize it.
There's no logic, even as a comedian during the war with Iraq, I would do jokes about Bush at the time, and there was some conservative members in the audience who would say, you can't criticize our president. And I would say, wait a minute, one of the excuses we're going into Iraq is to bring them democracy. And you're saying I can't exercise my democratic right in America. So it's the craziest thing in the world. And today, I do shows sometimes. I did a show in Dallas, show went great, diverse audience. And the way I do my Trump jokes, I've really kind of tried to tone it down a little bit because I don't want people to feel like they're being bombarded the whole show with Trump jokes. And some lady sent me an email afterwards. She said, I was enjoying the show until you started making fun of our leader. The same way that you would expect respect from a child, our leaders deserve respect from us. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're saying that we need to be children to our leaders, which is how some people see this crap.
Besides which, they're monumentally full of crap.
Oh yeah.
During Obama, were you guys showing respect? Were you like the children that looked up to your leader, Obama? No, you were ripping him every single day. So shut your pie hole about not criticizing the president because you're all goddamn liars. Every single one of you.
Every conservative for 4 years was just constantly saluting the president for 4 years.
Sure?
Well, he wasn't born here, so that's why they were able to do that. They see.
There was always a racist excuse. All right, what's next?
Okay, let's have a little fun. I can't tell anymore. I don't know what's fun or what's depressing, and it's all a big parfait. Anyway, Donald Trump has had a lot of horrible ideas in the past few years, like banning a religion, wasting tens of billions of dollars to build a gigantic wall. This one is more of a weird, impossible idea than a bad idea, but we're gonna break it down. He wants to buy Greenland. This is from insiders who've heard him talking about this, who say in meetings, at dinners, and in passing conversations, Mr. Trump has asked advisors whether the US can acquire Greenland, listened with interest when they discuss its abundant resources and geopolitical importance, even though he doesn't know what those words mean, and according to two of the people, has asked his White House counsel to look into the idea. So this is something that he has apparently been bringing up quite a bit. Yeah. Should we buy Greenland?
Okay, I have to say, I actually don't think this one's crazy. Now, is it likely? No. Okay, and if I was gonna bring up this in the White House, I would tell my advisors, now guys, I get it. It sounds crazy. And please don't leak, okay? But is it in any way, shape, or form remotely possible that we could buy any land at this juncture in human history? Because it's not like we haven't bought land before. Seward's Folly, we bought Alaska, and they thought it was a bad idea, hence it's called Seward's Folly, but it turned out it was a great idea, the Louisiana Purchase, great idea. So, and Greenland only has 56,000 people on it, and to me, I think that it's an interesting idea for the same reason that Donald Trump does. He thinks, well, climate change is going to make that land more valuable because the ice is gonna melt. Okay, but then he thinks probably drill for minerals and oil and all that stuff. Now, what does that tell you? He of course believes in climate change. In reality, he does. Otherwise, why are we having a conversation about Greenland all of a sudden? Only because the ice is melting.
It's natural beauty.
Yeah, it was natural beauty for decades on end. All of a sudden, Trump's interested because the ice is gone and he knows it. So all that talk about climate change being a Chinese hoax is a total and utter lie.
Maybe it's the white people. He just wants more white people.
Well, actually, Maz, there is something to that, right? So if you buy, quote unquote, buy Greenland, what would you make it? Well, presumably you'd make it a state. So how come Puerto Rico's not a state? That's a territory. Oh, well, I mean, Greenland, I guarantee you if you ask Trump, because he's too stupid to know otherwise, he'll immediately blurt out what he actually thinks. Which is like, well, we got some good people up there. We have some good people up there, right? And what are the people in Puerto Rico? Oops.
They're brown people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Can Trump name 5 facts about Greenland?
Well, first of all,
he'll get its name. Sure, that's
no,
one.
no, come on. To be fair, can anyone name 5 facts about Greenland?
Well, there's a whole green and it's ice and ice and green.
Could Trump point to Greenland on a map?
No.
Come on,
maybe
he's got. I mean, I think that he's
in 2 guesses. I think because he might go Iceland first and then be like, oh, this that one.
No, he knows it's the big one. No, I think he's mentally ill, and even he could probably point to Greenland on
Now,
the map.
would they call it Trumpland after that? Would that become Trumpland?
Then I vote no immediately.
How about we give him like one of those? We should give him one of the stands. Trumpanistan.
Yeah.
White Manistan.
White Manistan.
We've got
there
some
you
of
go.
those. Okay, so look, I've got a couple quotes from politicians in Denmark who are obviously affiliated government and all that, that we're gonna read insulting him, that'll be fun. But just, I wanna read a little bit of the history that you have alluded to, because I did my research too. So currently the US military operates the Thule Air Base in northern Greenland, and Trump's administration has been watching the Arctic region closely as tensions between Russia and China heat up over the area, and climate change opens up potential new shipping routes. The new shipping routes are the entirety of the Arctic because the entire thing is melting. Most of it's on fire right now, honestly. And so get ready for a lot of shipping going through there. But we do have an air base because we have air bases and military bases in virtually every country on the face of the earth. For some reason, we're just allowed to have that. Now, additionally, other countries have attempted to get some of that territory. In 2016, China attempted to buy an old military base in Greenland before Denmark stepped in. Officials anonymously told reporters at the time that they denied access as a favor to the US.
Right, so Denmark runs Greenland. I bet you most people don't know that.
In terms of foreign affairs, I've read that they're relatively autonomous when it comes to purely domestic affairs, but in terms of their foreign affairs, yes.
Yeah, so you would have to presumably buy it from Denmark. But look, guys, it would be a really interesting, complicated intellectual conversation if you were really to go down that road. How do you buy any territory from a foreign country, right? And then you have to look at, well, how autonomous is Greenland? Who would vote on that? Would Greenland vote on it? Would Denmark vote on it? Would they both vote on it? And is there a price that you could pay for that much land anywhere on the planet? It's the largest island in the world. Do you think Trump had any of those conversations?
I was wondering as you're going on, like, you think geopolitical, he's already asleep, he's done.
No.
It's a big thing I could do. And he'd be buying it even though he wouldn't have to spend his own money. And not spending his own money is his favorite way to spend money. You spend daddy's money and then eventually spend the US taxpayers' money when they bail you out a whole bunch of times. So he'd do it just because it's a big thing. He doesn't know anything about that part of the world because it's a part of the world and he doesn't know anything about the world.
I wonder if some dude at a party kind of just mentioned it to him. Like, you know what you should look into is buying Greenland. He's like, oh, look into it. They starts talking about it. I was like, what's the deal with Greenland? Can we buy it? Is it for sale?
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a simpleton.
You just order it on Amazon, or how does it work?
If you want to do something impressive, fix the pipes in Flint. It's closer.
Fix your head.
Yeah.
Go to a psychiatrist.
That's even closer.
That'd be great.
Yeah, no, you're all undoubtedly right in that it's up north, so it's got good people. He would get to do something big with other people's money. The ice is melting, so he thinks, "Ooh, I like real estate. That's a lot of real estate that's going to open up underneath the ice."
Yeah.
And I guarantee you're right that one of his knucklehead friends were like, "Why don't we buy Greenland?" And he doesn't think like, hey, is that even possible? What kind of a thing is that, right?
Yeah.
Like, what would be the process for that? No, he immediately goes, oh, I like that. Yeah, why don't we buy Greenland? Okay, we'll give him some green money for the green land.
Because he's, we all know he is not the initiator of a lot of his own thoughts. It's like Fox News is the initiator of a lot of his own thoughts. So somebody got in his head, and then he's been bringing it up at these meetings, and now they're all looking at each other like, what? How do we tell him like this? What's the process for this?
Yeah,
I think it was Kilmeade. I think Kilmeade did it.
Yeah,
I can see that happening. Anyway, last thing, guys, if you're saying like, if you've never heard about Trump, welcome back to planet Earth. And you say, well, I mean, I don't know if that's so, if you guys are being fair. Cenk said like it's an interesting intellectual idea, right? And you guys are bashing him, but you're assuming he didn't think it through. Once in a meeting, he said to the military, I like nukes. Why don't we have 10 times as many nukes? Go ahead, guys, build it 10 times as many nukes. And everybody in the room was like, what? Right? That would cost more money than our entire budget times 10. Like that, like we couldn't possibly build 10 times as many nuclear weapons as we have now. Shouldn't you first ask how much that would cost? Is it feasible? No, it's just, I like nukes. Why don't we have 10 times as many? Well, that's the one meeting that Tillerson walked out of and said, that guy's an effing moron. That was the Secretary of State at the time. Of course he is, of course. There's no, in this case, same thing, no sophistication. Why don't we just buy it? Well, we have money, let's just buy it.
By the way, isn't he busy trying to get rid of people? Like now he wants to add people that probably don't want to be a part of this mess that's become this country now. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe let's ask the Greenlanders, you want to be a part of this? They're probably like, nah, we're cool.
Oh, they did ask people.
Certain.
No. I mean, look, they didn't ask all 56,000 people in Greenland. It is amazing that there's only 56,000 in that giant landmass. But anyway, no, every person they asked was like, no.
Yeah, they said, the foreign minister said, we're open for business, but we're not for sale. And why would they want to join America and lose their single payer health care, their family leave, all of those great benefits they have?
Get shot up.
Get shot. It's exciting living here, I'll give us that.
Yeah.
So we've been talking a lot about climate change. Why don't we turn now to some more climate change related information. Scientists have been trying to get a handle on methane and the effect that it's having on our climate and on climate change. And it turns out that one of the reasons that some of their prior estimates on how much damage methane is doing have been off is that there are different kinds of methane and they've been counting it inaccurately. And so we're gonna run through some of the information. The important takeaway here is that methane is really, really bad and we don't want more of it to be released. So let's talk in particular about the sort of methane that we get from shale gas production. This is using modern hydrofracturing techniques. You've heard of fracking before. It tends to produce lighter methane than conventional natural gas drilling. So there are different sorts of both the drilling that produces methane and then the different methane types that you have. So if the lighter methane that we're talking of shale gas production is explicitly accounted for, which it generally is not in these sorts of estimates, shale gas production in North America over the past decade may have contributed more than half of all of the increased methane emissions from fossil fuels globally, and approximately 1/3 of the total increased emissions from all sources globally over the past decade. These are huge influences on climate change that are not being properly analyzed or properly estimated at this point. In addition, so that's the way that scientists are looking at it, but the government is also missing out on a lot of information here. 6 years of intensive research from the Environmental Defense Fund has shown that methane emissions from US oil and natural gas production are as much as 60% higher than government estimates. So that's hypothetically during a period in which, outside the last 2 years, the government sort of cared to get it right. That of course is out the door. And in fact, the Trump administration is readying a plan to end direct federal regulation of methane leaks from oil and gas facilities, even as some energy companies insist they don't want the relief. That's partially because some of these big oil companies, they know how bad it looks to suddenly have this regulation taken off of them. And they also know how damaging these sorts of leaks can be, not necessarily in terms of what the effect it has on the earth is, but in terms of the impact on the views, the public views of their own company. And so in some ways, the government, like with military budgeting, they're going farther in to try to help out this group than the group itself actually wants.
Yeah, so somewhere Josh Fox is going, I told you. So he did Gasland and is one of the top experts on fracking, and he's been warning about methane leaks from fracking and how they cause more damage. than other ways of getting energy from the ground.
Can I mention that number just because I probably should have said it earlier, but if you have not been following methane as closely as I have, it traps heat in the atmosphere roughly 84 times the rate of CO2. Scientists estimate that around 25% of current global warming traces to methane, even though obviously it is a far smaller part in terms of volume of the problem, it has an outsized impact, and thus it's a big part of the problem we find ourselves with.
Yeah, and so when they released the Green New Deal, the right wing made up this thing about how they wanted to ban cows. Of course, that wasn't remotely true. They lie all the time. There was a mention of cows because the point was you're actually trying to fix climate change, not unnecessarily attack oil companies. Like oil companies are an enormous part of climate change because of all the carbon that's emitted. But cows, other farm animals, literally their farts, their burps, I know it sounds funny, it creates methane. And methane is 84 times worse than carbon. So if you're taking a real look at a real problem, you would want to address all those things. It doesn't mean you get rid of cows. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just you have an honest conversation about how do you stop these different things if you were a scientist. So and the reason I even bother to clarify that is because the right wing is, for them, everything's a conspiracy because there is just a few billionaires that launch conspiracies and buy off all their media, their politicians, et cetera, et cetera. So they assume everyone else is conspiratorial. They're like, oh, so you want to kill off the oil companies because you hate them. No, we're trying to control both the carbon and the methane, and we're looking at all the different ways we can do that because there's no other planet and we need to live on this one. And so when we see that methane is leaking more from fracking than we originally anticipated, that is a very big cause for concern. Because originally the thought was, well, fracking has other problems, but it's actually cleaner than getting, for example, coal, which emits a lot of carbon. But if it turns out it's leaking more methane, that will swamp the amount of carbon that coal is putting into the air. So, I mean, if we had a conspiracy, the left did, and we just arbitrarily hated coal or oil, we would be against this. We'd be like, oh no, coal is the enemy. No, we care about facts and science and actual data.
And it's incredibly important because even some people politicians who claim I take climate change seriously and that's why I have this plan to do something about it eventually. Sure, we're gonna spin up all these new technologies, it's gonna take 30, 50 years, and during that time, we're gonna use natural gas as a bridge fuel. It will be a bridge to the future technology that will eventually fix everything. But the issue is if the bridge is as bad or potentially worse than the things that it's bridging over, then that is a horrific plan that we cannot afford to put into effect. Now, I was doing some research on, obviously we know Donald Trump, he wants to like full speed ahead. We're gonna have tons of these projects, more frac gas power plants. And by the way, just to give you an idea of how big of an issue it is, a recent report from Food and Water Watch identified more than 700 frac gas infrastructure projects that have recently been built or proposed for development. So this is full frac ahead on these projects. But if you listen to Democratic presidential candidates, many say that they would ban fracking. They say it, take that with a grain of salt. But the ones who have said it are Biden, Booker, Buttigieg, de Blasio, Gabbard, Inslee, Messam, Sanders, Warren, and Williamson. Almost all of the others have said that they would not ban it, but they would regulate it more. There's a few, I think Castro might have moved over to ban since then. But
Steyer's for banning.
Steyer too. This is before he had launched into the candidacy.
Can't we all just ride bikes like the Dutch and not you need any of this crap? The only thing I like about fracking is the actual word. Like, get the frack out of here. Like, it feels like a good
Battlestar.
It's a great word, but other than that, it's a disaster. And this is part of the problem with the distractions that come about with Trump's culture wars. Is that we all get so caught up in them, where a news piece like this isn't as sexy and is not as prevalent, but it's very true. I mean, fracking has a lot of problems, and this is one of the big ones. I've been reading a little bit about some of the earthquake stuff that it causes. So it's something that needs to be looked into and regulated rather than being deregulated and just running buck wild. But because he's got us all busy with all the other stuff, nobody's really paying attention to this as much as they should be.
Well, if you want this sort of non-sexy news, you should tune into the Damage Report, because on 3 episodes this week, the core of our shows, one was reforestation and deforestation, one was on literally how different animal species help fight climate change, and the third was on the Endangered Species Act. So it was a very unsexy week in the news for us.
I'm already asleep and you just gave me the headlines.
We tried to make it fun.
If you do want to watch the Damage Report, you can watch it on Roku, Pluto, Zumo. You could also become a Young Turks member at tyt.com/join. But I'm going to double down on what Maz said. The fracking is a fun word.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, let's keep the word.
Yeah. And I want to make one more serious point. Look, this is not just a Trump problem. Obama did some really good environmental regulations at the very end of his second term, but overall he was terrible on this issue. He allowed a wide-scale fracking all across the country, and a lot of Democratic governors like John Hickenlooper, God rest his political soul, he just dropped out of the race yesterday. Anyway, Hickenlooper was the worst. He fracked the hell out of Colorado, and so did a lot of Democratic governors. Again, it's not about partisanship, it's about reality and facts, and it was Democratic governors that did a lot of that, also Republican governors as well. But now, of course, Donald Trump is trying to do the mother of all fracking, which I guess would make him a mother fracker.
There you go. What a great word. Frack me, frack you. I love it. We could do this all day.
Apparently John can't. Okay, he just can't. All right, we'll be right back, guys. And we've got a great story for you guys. Oh my God, guess who's in? At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today. Pole position to win the presidency. No, new polls out. Huge news, huge. We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Pedro, not Pedro, right? It's in your name. Anyway, I love Maz Jobrani. I've been a fan since Saddam Hussein Discount Pump.
Nice, thank you. That's from the first special, Axis of Evil Comedies. But I don't know where you can find that, but anyway, I'll just keep plugging.
But make sure you check out Maz's Netflix special.
Yeah, Immigrant. It's called Immigrant on Netflix. Check it out.
Boom.
Thank you.
Lisa Wetch 10 says Cenk is just a wee bit wound up, isn't he? Well, I mean, pretty much every day. I am Sock on Twitter says, you're telling me fracturing the earth is a bad idea? Shocked and chagrined, Cenk. And then last one's YouTube Super Chat. Coffee Jack says, take my coins, keep up the good work. I don't know if he said it in that tone of voice.
Fine, you can have them.
Yes, but we appreciate you using YouTube Super Chat because obviously that helps the show. And if you're on the website, you could do it at tyt.com/yes. Yep.
Okay, we turn now to the presidential race on the Democratic side. Joe Biden has had a rough couple of weeks in terms of his gaffes. You can probably fill it in, but you know, Parkland and Theresa May, and he's getting terror attacks wrong. And it's just he's fumbling from one gaffe to another, and his aides have been watching this, and so they apparently have a new strategy that they might implement. They've been floating the idea of altering his schedule in an effort to reduce the gaffes he's made in recent days. The allies, growing increasingly nervous about Biden's verbal flubs, have said it's an approach that's been suggested in 2 campaign officials on the heels of the former vice president's stumbles. And so effectively by alter his schedule, they mean not have him in public as much. Because if he's in public, he can talk, and if he can talk, he can gaffe, and they just gotta get right out in front of that. And so you guys have covered a lot of races over the years. Is it a good sign when the strategy is to take you off the campaign trail and out of the public eye?
No, when you're trying to hide the candidate, that's probably means you don't have a good candidate.
That's like Weekend at Bernie's, where the guy was dead and they were trying to pretend like he was alive. You don't want to have to like pretend like your candidate is like, oh yeah, he's good, he's ready to go. He's just not right. He needs, he's gonna take a little break, but we'll be back. He's doing all right. No, trust us, he's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, like so you have your advice is a bad idea, but one ally says he needs to be a strong force on the campaign trail, but he also has to pace himself. I mean, the thing is, look, he had already been campaigning less than a lot of the others. Like, not everybody is campaigning at the same pace as each other. And Joe Biden joined, not last, there have been others since he joined, but he was one of the last ones. He's been in this for literally months less than some of the earliest candidates.
No, guys, they're telling their own candidate to shut up. That is not a good sign. No one on planet Earth could pretend that's a good sign. One of his allies said, no, Biden's great. He just has a tendency to make blunders later in the day.
That's brutal.
I'm more of an early morning president. Every afternoon, you leave the vice president to do that.
Yeah, so number one, if you're worried that your candidate's too old, saying he's got to get the early bird special and he can't talk later at night is not a good way to go. And secondly, you still have to be president at night. So it's terrible. But another one I was amused by. Apparently, a major Democratic donor, according to The Hill, said this: a lot of people are nervous that he's lost some of his mojo. They're getting nervous about him going toe to toe with Trump. But the problem is there doesn't seem to be an alternative. There's 25 people in the race.
There's never been as many alternatives.
That's right. And so why would a major Democratic donor say that? Because they're like, well, because number 2 and number 3 are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, or Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And that is not an alternative if you're a Democratic donor. They're like, that's a nightmare for them because they actually would end the corruption, or at least they would attempt to end the corruption. So the donors are like, I mean, I don't know who's left. I guess nobody's left, right? Yeah. And they know the other moderates, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, in the race can't win because their ideas suck. They're just trying to ride off of Biden's name recognition. And so, I mean, we were told that Hickenlooper was from a purple state governor and conservative Democrat, and that's how you win in this country. After polling at 0% for most of the race, dropped out yesterday because he had no prayer. Because it doesn't work. The voters don't want conservative, pro-corporate, pro-donor Democrats. That's why Biden starting to fade is causing a panic in the Democratic establishment.
So here's the thing, that obviously, all that I read you, the new strategy, which they dispute, some are saying they're not gonna do that, but some are saying they are. That sounds like really bad news for Joe Biden today, but I read something else that sounds like worse news for Joe Biden, and it involves his best buddy in the entire world, Barack Obama. So former President Obama, you've probably read this, has taken an active interest in Joe Biden's presidential campaign, even holding a lunch with his former vice president last month. That all sounds good. Joe wants to hang out with him more anyway. It's been very clear. But apparently there had been some talk before Biden launched his candidacy that does not look good now for him. Obama asked 2 Biden aides to visit with him in March for a briefing on its strategy. Afterward, the Times reported that Obama told the aides they should make sure that Biden does not, quote, embarrass himself or, quote, damage his legacy while running for president. Ooh. But he said, that's what he said to the aides, which is bad. But what he said to Joe might be worse. You don't have to do this, Joe, you really don't, Obama told Mr. Biden earlier this year, according to a person familiar with the exchange. So
Obama's never believed in him.
To some extent, the way you say that might make some difference, but that's not like, go get him, buddy.
Yeah, and look, let's keep it real on a couple of different fronts on Obama. Obama convinced Biden not to run last time around because Obama doesn't believe in Biden. Part of the reason he doesn't believe in Biden is he kicked the living crap out of Biden in a primary really, really easily. People forget, back in the 2008 primary, it was mainly Obama versus Hillary Clinton, but there was a whole bunch of other Democrats in there, including Joe Biden, and Obama had way less name recognition than Joe Biden, had way less money in the beginning, had less everything. and easily crushed Biden because he is not a good candidate. All he's ever done is win in Delaware because he was, a congressman or senator from there for as literally my entire life. So he's never won a contested election in like 50 years. So, and why is he even in this race? Because he won a coin toss, in effect, right? It wasn't a literal coin toss, but Obama's like, should I go with Evan Bayh or should I go with Joe Biden to appeal to white voters? And he had a couple other names in there, I'm sure, Chris Dodd, et cetera. And he's like, Biden, oh, okay. If Evan Bayh had won the coin toss and was vice president, does anybody think Joe Biden would be in the presidential race, let alone leading? No one thinks that. So he has no actual, great credentials in being a candidate. Now, which leads me to the most devastating part, the actual polling. The Biden fade has begun. So now we got a poll out of Iowa. I believe that's a fairly relevant state. It's starting line at Change Polls, and in we've got a new leader, Elizabeth Warren. In fact, Joe Biden's now tied with Bernie Sanders. So depending on how you want to frame it, he's tied for second, tied for third, and fading and fading. Warren now has an 11-point lead in Iowa against Biden. Now here's the thing, you can say, hey, that's just one poll, and you could talk about, hey, what is the credibility of that poll, et cetera. But guys, it doesn't really matter. Does anyone think that Joe Biden, after losing the lead, is going to retake the lead? No one that knows politics thinks that. Once the fade begins, it's good night, Irene. Okay, then it's late night and he can't even talk. And then finally, you want to talk about a bigger poll and the whole country. An Economist YouGov poll now has Biden at 21% nationally and Elizabeth Warren at 20%. She's only 1 point behind him. So here comes Warren, and there goes Biden. And guys, the Democratic establishment has not woken up to this. Warren and Sanders are 2 and 3 with a guy who's almost certainly going to drop out of the top spot. That leaves the top 2 as progressives.
Well, they're afraid of progressives the same way that they were arguing against starting impeachment processes because they thought that starting the impeachment process, they were looking at what it did for Clinton back then. We're in a different world now. I think we're in a world where people can handle and want a more progressive candidate. So I think they should stop being afraid of being progressive.
Yeah, damn right. I wonder if anybody said that before. Oh, look at this tweet I found. The last tweet from election night 2016, I tweeted, mark my words, Elizabeth Warren will destroy Donald Trump in 2020. It will be a historic landslide. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Okay, all right.
Deep fake.
All right, we gotta go. Everybody check out Immigrant Maz Jobrani's Netflix special. Check out the Damage Report on this network and on all the platforms I mentioned, Roku, Pluto, Zumo, etc. Thank you guys, love it. We got a whole other round coming up for you guys, including there's been a decision in the Epstein case, suicide or homicide. We'll talk about it when we come back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.